Hey Bristles, today I'm going to be continuing on with my Deathrattle Skeletons. Previous video I did the bone. Today I'm going to be doing the armour, some of the other details like belts and things. The weapons. I was going to be doing the purple cloth, but you know, I shot footage of doing one way of doing the purple and I wasn't too happy with it, so I redid it. So that kind of became a little bit long, so I'm going to cover painting purple cloth on these in the following video, and today it'll just be focusing on the armor and the weapons. The reason for this is I don't want the videos being too long and too heavy, because number one, it's a little harder for me to manage and takes longer to edit, and if I want to keep on a schedule loosely, just shorter videos is a bit more manageable. For the meantime, I'm going to do longer ones, I'm sure, at some stage, but for now I'd like to keep it a little bit more manageable for my sake and yours, and for consistency. So that's why these are going to be split up. Don't worry, this week and then next week will be the end of the Deathrattle Skeletons, and I'll be moving on to doing something different. So maybe something completely different, maybe something in the same wheelhouse, like maybe I'll paint my direwolves or a vampire. If you have any preference, or maybe you want to see one of those things or something else, leave a comment and I'll take it into consideration. Let's get on with the painting. So here we go. This is where we left off last week with just the bone done on the skeleton. I'm really happy with it. And for starters, I'm just going to start blocking out the rest of the colours. So even though I won't be painting the purple in this video, I will be blocking in the base coat with Nagaroth Night. So that'll be one or two layers to get full coverage. When it comes to the armour, that includes the shield, I will be using Necro Gold from Metal in Alchemy from scale 75, but you can of course use whatever colour you want. I'm sure there's a similar alternative in Games Workshop or Army Painter or whatever. There was almost full coverage with the one layer, but I just put a second one just to be sure. This is one of the reasons I really like the Metal in Alchemy paints, because they cover really well. And moving on, I'm going to use Thrash Metal from the same range to do the spearhead, the coin mail, the little spike on the shield, and there's a little stub, I don't know what it's called, at the end of the spear. Also, some of the helmets have the coin mail. Next up, I'm using Rhinox Hide to base paint the shaft handle of the spear. In retrospect, when I'm done this, I feel like maybe black might be a better call for the wood, or maybe like a pale worn wood, but for now I'm sticking with the brown. You'll see here I do base coat the straps holding the chest armor on that go across the back of the skeleton's torso. However, going on, I decide to paint them black because I'm just not happy with them being brown. It doesn't look good next to the purple, in my opinion. But anyway, I digress. Next, I take Drakenhof Nightshade. Is it Nightshade? Yes, Drakenhof Nightshade, and I just put that over everything that isn't bone, everything that I've just base coated, because I want that uniformity. It's going to introduce a dull cool tone while being uniform across the rest of the features. So I use a broad enough brush for big areas, but then as soon as I get close to parts that are next to the bone, I switch to a smaller brush so as not to get any on there, while also still being careful because I don't want to undo any of the bone that I'm really happy with. And here we have the Drakenhof Nightshade dry, and you can see the armor is dulled down and the other elements that aren't metallic have been darkened sufficiently, and I'm happy with it. So now I'm just going to highlighting the armor. I'm going to come back with the Necro Gold, and I'm mostly just going to stipple onto some of the areas that would catch the light more and leave the recesses completely alone. So this is mostly just on the upper part of the chest and the upper part of the helmet. Around some of the edges I do edge highlight, such as where the armpits would be, and the bottom of the chest armor, and along the edges of the other armor, like the van braces, I believe they're called, on the forearms, and the shin and foot armor. But for open spaces such as the chest, I stipple there. When it comes to the shield, however, to speed things up a little bit, I switch to a bigger brush and just dry brush that, simply just to be a bit quicker, because to stipple and edge highlight such a broad area, it feels like that would take too long. For the next highlight, for the armor, I'm gonna just be economical and just use what's already on my palette. So the Necro Gold mixed with the Thrash Metal, and I'm just going to mix that together roughly 50-50. It might be leaning a fraction more towards the silver, but ultimately not too bright. I'm just going to repeat what I did before, except with the stippling it's going to be a lot more focused, more specular, where the light would hit on the chest, and I've switched to a smaller brush just to make things a little bit easier and to be a bit neater. Up until this point I've been using the paint handle just so as not to be touching the miniature, but to be honest, sometimes I find in order to get like better brush control or a better angle of the miniature, I just need to hold it in my hand. So I've taken that off now. So the important thing is paint in a way that makes you comfortable, even if some people might consider you a filthy animal in doing so. And when it comes to the shield, again, I just dry brush, but I focus it more towards the top of the shield, the part nearest the skeleton's shoulder, and not the bottom of the shield. A little bit there, but more so on the top center. And also a little bit on the helmet, but I'm not sure why I did that. Why did I do that? Anyway, here's how he's looking. So I take out the Thrash Metal again here, and at this point I do use it in the footage to highlight the armor as well as the weapon, the silver parts, but to be honest I would just use this for the silver parts now, and later on I do go back with the rest of my skeletons, including this one, and I actually use a different silver. I'll show it now in a minute. So ignore me using Thrash Metal to highlight the more gold looking armor, and I only use it going forward on the top of the spear, the bottom of the spear, whatever that bit's called, the coin mail, but making sure to leave some of that Drakenhof nightshade on these surfaces in the shadows, because I like how that shadow looks. What else did I use? Oh yeah, the spike on the front of the shield. I decided to experiment a little bit at this point, and I took a contrast Magos purple to fill out the flat surfaces of the shield. I just gave this a couple of coats, with going lighter towards the top of the shield and heavier and more coats on the bottom of the shield to try and tint this to see how that would look. I don't dislike it. I also went over it with, oh, what's the wash purple? It's here on my desk somewhere, but my desk is a mess. Ah, there it is. It was a little bit too much in the red hue, so I decided to use Druchii Violet over top of that. And I do like it, but it's not what I'm going for. The intention was to differentiate between the purple cloth and the purple on the shield, but I feel it doesn't serve how the model looks in the end. Quick step here, I just use some Rhinox hide and dry brush the shaft of the spear. That's it. And then for the next highlight of that, I take some Carrick Stone and I just do a lighter dry brush with that Carrick Stone. I felt this was a little bit too bright, so I went over it again with Drakenhof Nightshade. I don't know if this was worth doing. And here's where I take out the Druchii Violet and change the tone of that shield panel. And I focus that more towards the bottom. Again, I do really like this. I'm not going to use it for this project. What I end up doing with the shields, I'm much happier with, even though it's a lot more labor intensive. Now, here you see me highlighting with the Thrash Metal again, which I don't actually stick with.
I think I just used it to clean up the shield a little bit at that point after the purple on it. But as you can see, here's Mithril Silver from Warcolor, from the Nostalgia colors, and this is feckin' fantastic. I love it, and I don't know, maybe it's just because of those rose tinted glasses, and it's a paint that I do miss some of the old Warhammer paints, and this is an excellent replacement for that. But anyway, so I feel like at a certain point in models, after spending some time on it, some of the areas kind of look like they need a little separation between them. So I've just taken some Chaos Black from the Warcolor range there and thinned it down a bit, and just paint a thin line between the different elements just to separate them and to give them that kind of definition, and to give each element its own space. Also, there are a few parts with the bone where it kind of went into the recesses a little bit more than I would have liked, such as the fingers, and I'm just going to put a little bit in there just to separate each finger. I also just give all of the bone a quick look over to make sure, just to check if I need to do that anywhere else, and I do so accordingly where needed. For the next step, I'm going to take some Carrick Stone and that Chaos Black. I'm just going to mix them together. Maybe like 2 parts Chaos Black to 1 part Carrick Stone, possibly a bit more black. Anyway, just going to use that to highlight any of the black kind of leathers. So some of the little daggers on their waists have tattered and worn scabbards, so I do that there, and I also do it on the straps on the back of the skeleton, on the back of the torso. Also, some of the helmets have some leather hanging down, so I paint that black too in the same fashion as the rest of the leathers. Just going to add some more Carrick Stone to that, and with that mix I do a finer edge highlight, and I also add some micro textures such as some just little scratches and blemishes, especially on beside parts where they have actually sculpted scratches into the straps, which there are a few here and there. For the next part, I'm going to do some simple weathering just with some watered down paint. So I'm taking Mornfang Brown here and adding a good bit of water, and this is going to act as my rust. Of course, there are products that are purpose produced for weathering, such as, you know, like Dirty Down Rust and all that stuff, or pigments, weathering pigments, but they can be expensive, and also they're not always easily accessible, especially to beginners. So literally just thinning down some paint and putting it around, like in this case Mornfang Brown, and just putting some in the recesses and some of the areas where there is sculpted damage, and around some like the rivets or bolts. That's just simple and effective rust, and you can do some like little trails down, just pull the brush down lightly to have some running down. And then for some oxidation on the armor, now I know oxidation is usually exclusively just for copper, but who cares. So I've just taken some nihilic oxide and watered that down a little bit, just a tiny bit, but in like the deeper parts where there are pockmarks that have gone quite deep and corroded the armor deep, I've just put pure nihilic oxide. To be honest, I don't know if this fits. Let me know down in the comments if you think this was a good idea. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I like it, but I also think it could easily, I could have easily just left it out and it still would have looked fine. I think in my head, oxidization on like non kind of iron or steel, more gold, brass and copper elements, it just, I think, I don't know, maybe I've just been mentally conditioned to think that it's synonymous with age and so, like really aged metals. What do you think? As you can see, the skeletons still aren't quite finished, but by the end of the next video they will be. And I promise the next video will be the last one about the skeletons, because this should be done. And also I am dying to move on to get it, that was not intended, I just realized as I said it. Anyway, let's not waffle too much about that. I'm dying to move on to another unit for my soulblight gravelords, and yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed the video and you learned something useful from it. Please consider liking, subscribing and commenting down below. I always get back to every comment and I appreciate every like and subscribe. So look after yourselves, be good to each other. Yeah, have a nice time. Bye.